Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to have this great team with me today. Some of them we already meet and know from the Israeli Innovation Authority, but I'm very proud to introduce the three of those stars. Please introduce yourself and the company as well.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oren Buskira. I'm a co-founder and the Chief R&D Officer at Innoviz Technologies. Innoviz develops a LiDAR, a high-performance sensor, laser-based sensors for autonomous cars with the purpose of enabling autonomous driving on public roads starting next year. The company started roughly 6 years ago. Since then, grew to over 400 employees, raised over $600 million. We've partnered with major companies such as BMW and Magna and Samsung. And we are now close to launching the first product to the market to public roads with BMW. And we have the next product, the Innoviz 2, also coming up very soon.
Thank you. Chagai?
So, hi, pleasure to be here. My name is Chagai. I'm the CEO of AutoTalk. AutoTalk's name speaks for itself. Cars talking. The vision is simple. You harness communication in order to improve safety on roads. You interact between vehicles, two-wheelers, smart mobility, micro-mobility infrastructure. And by allowing all users of the road to communicate, we can eliminate all accident types, especially non-line of sight accidents, which predominantly today are the largest factor in accidents, because when we are surprised, then there is no room to prevent the accidents. And even latest tragedies result in involvement of two-wheelers, which is now between 30 and 50% of fatalities in Israel and globally is two-wheelers, people who are outside the car. So the vision eventually is to allow all users of the road to exchange information and warn each other about potential accidents that are about to happen within the next few seconds or even 5 or 10 seconds. And it complements other sensors in the car like LiDARs, cameras, and radars, and help to create an environment where everyone can seamlessly communicate even without a network. So eventually these are the talking cars of the future. AutoTalk has been around for almost 12 years, so it's quite a long journey, and we will probably discuss it further. But
how many employees do you have?
So we are around 100 employees, raised around $150 million, and we have like multiple projects already that are going to production in 23-24 timeframe. So in the future, new cars, every car in the future, will have devices that will allow them to communicate with other cars and with other objects in the road. In the future, even smartwatches and smartphones will participate in this ecosystem. So that's AutoTalks.
Thank you. Ronen.
And I'm Ronen Smoley. I'm the CEO of Argo Cybersecurity. As you can guess by the name of the company, we're here to protect the devices and the cars that other companies develop. The company was founded in 2014, 200 employees today, acquired by Continental, the German Continental, in 2017. We have offices around the world in Tokyo, Seoul, Germany, and Detroit. The company developed solutions to protect the cars from being hacked, intrusion detection system in the vehicle, as well as solutions outside the vehicle in the back-end, vehicle security operations center, vulnerability management, all with the mission to protect cars from being hacked. Today, we are engaged in over 20 production projects with the first cars on the road this year protected by Argus, already on the road. It's a big proud. I'm very proud to have cars outside in Ayalon protected by Argus, working with over 15 OEMs worldwide. And yeah, that's it. That's the quick introduction.
It's good enough. So everything sounds so promising, so good. But I guess so many people, the younger startups are watching us and want to know, were there any challenges when you were facing this, the growth stage, entering this phase? Can you describe some of them, the most hurtful ones?
Sure. I'll start. So Innoviz is now providing parts, components to automotive companies from the top tier of the world. And we needed to learn over time the hard way that there's a huge difference between developing a demonstrator or a prototype to developing a very complex hardware embedded product that needs to function on the road for 15 years reliably, and that people can trust their lives with it. And you also need to be able to produce this LiDAR in very high volume at a very aggressive price, because this is how the auto industry works, very low margins. So this is knowledge that simply did not exist in Israel. The knowledge of design for mass volume, complex hardware for the auto industry. And this is something that we needed to build over time. So first there was just the technical know-how of how to develop an electro-optical system that can work in automotive conditions, which are very, very difficult. And we also had the challenge of being able to work in the quality standards expected, required by our customers, such as BMW. And this is something that probably every high-tech company, Israeli tech company that meets a car company needs to learn at some point. And this is something that in some ways is contrary to the Israeli culture. Okay, so we are very used to, in Israel, to moving fast, to experimenting, to improvising, to not having final and very thorough plans. And this is something that needs to be learned by companies like us that target mass production, the mass market in the auto industry. We've done that first by working with a lot of suppliers and consultants globally, and then by working with our customers. We've developed this culture, these processes, so now we stand in the same line with the top companies in the world in our field.
Ronen, your company dealing with cybersecurity, it sounds untangible, something, it's not like the box that we have here with all the sensor. Are you facing challenges? Did you face any?
Yes, so I can say that a company, especially software company in the automotive industry, during its startup phase is a completely different company than the company that delivers to manufacturing. Software that is going to be deployed in a running car that drive people. When it comes to cybersecurity, our mission is to detect attacks and stop them. And one of the key challenges is avoiding false positive. False positive is when something happens and you're not sure if it's real attack or not, and you're stopping it. What could happen is that you actually stop a car or are doing some harm. So the standards are very high. When you develop a software, there are certain criteria and ISOs that you need to comply with, which when you develop the software in the beginning, you don't take into account. As Oren said, you just run forward, you engage with the customers, you try to get market recognition as quickly as possible, but then when you're engaged in production project, it's a completely different story. You need everything to be thought of from the beginning, well done. If a customer is asking for for a change, you cannot jump and say, yes, I'll do it for you tomorrow, because it doesn't work like that. And all the processes of testing and QAing requires, even from personnel standpoint, different skill set at the company. So the company evolves over time to be able to become mature and deliver to the automotive industry and grown-up software. Now, the paradigm is that initially you're trying to run fast and develop quick things real quickly. Then you become mature and develop to production, but then you need to scale up and change again in order to be innovative and keep up with the pace of the development. So all the time you need to be ready for the next step, for the next evolution of the company.
Guy, you need the boxes to talk to each other. So what's so complex about this?
Yeah, first it's a very long journey. I will add two things maybe to what Ronen and Oren said. We have to have a split personality. It's like Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's the same company has to have two kind of different and very very distinct personalities. One is to run fast and be ahead of the rest, right? We eventually, in this ecosystem, if you are not better, nobody wants to work with small companies just because you have something interesting. They want to work with you because you have something much better or greater than all your competition. And sometimes the competition is other small companies, and sometimes it's corporates. In our case, we fight giants in our market. It's a market that is dominated by not small companies, but also big companies. And for that, you need to be innovative and much better than the rest. And the other personality is quality and persistence and stamina, right? They need to see you there for the longer term. We interacted with this market maybe well before other companies in this great ecosystem that we have today, and they need to understand that you are there for another 10 years. Like people always tell us, who's going to pick the phone in 10 years when we have a failure? Who's going to talk to us? Who's going to support us? And for that is the other personality of long-term, vision, quality, and persistence to be there for them. And yes, it's a different company, right? You have quality in one side, moving slow with high quality, and on the other side you have to have fast-moving, innovative mindset, because otherwise you become less relevant when others do that. So it's two personalities in the same company.
What about those, that terrible word called regulation? How does this affect this phase of growing, Chagai?
Yeah. So in our case, things have changed over time. So we now have, in our case, the V2X function introduced into NCAP. NCAP is, for people who are not familiar with the term, New Car Assessment Program. It's the assessment program that introduced in the history every technology in a vehicle. These are airbags and seat belts, front and back, even cameras. Every type of safety technology was introduced to this regulation. This regulation provides you safety score. It's the 5-star rating that everyone wants to have when he buys a new car. Why? Because when we put ourselves and our families and kids inside, we want to have a safe vehicle. So V2X is going to be introduced into NCAP in 2025, and that is an accelerating function in our industry, at least. When something gets into NCAP, it guarantees in some ways that it will eventually reach every vehicle over time because people buy safe cars. That's one thing. And in our industry, it's a bit more difficult, or maybe may I say it's even a tougher challenge because you have to build an ecosystem. It's not only us. We have to talk to our competitors. So there's an interoperability, right? You have to talk to Qualcomm or to NXP or to others that are semi-companies that are providing their chipsets in this ecosystem, and there's never going to be a single supplier in our industry. So the ecosystem has to agree on what's the protocol, vocabulary, what are we exchanging exactly? Are we exchanging perceptions that a LiDAR perceived or a camera perceived? How we are protecting the information that we're exchanging?
Exactly. What about privacy issues? I mean,
so there is
all of
privacy.
you are dealing with privacy issues.
So there is a cybersecurity element, okay? And there is a privacy element. The privacy element is that we never know each other, which means that I have to trust you, but I never met you, and I don't know which car you are driving, and I don't know your license plate, but all that matters is that we are not going to hit each other. And whether you are on a bike or in a car, the identity doesn't matter, but we are willing to sacrifice, or shall I say even to contribute. It's not privacy because our privacy is protected. So we contribute information so we don't hit each other. And that should be strictly kept, at least in our industry.
Oren? Regulation.
Yeah, so we're affected in one direct way and several indirect ways. So one indirect way in which we're affected is that for autonomous cars to actually reach the streets, the regulation needs to allow it. And of course, our market depends on that. If autonomous cars are not allowed to go on the street, then our sales get delayed. So we have the interest that governments globally will move forward with approving further levels of autonomy on the road. So this is mainly a concern of our customers, and we're affected indirectly. Way in which we're affected directly is that all car companies need to comply with certain quality standards. So to ensure that the product meets its safety requirements, it's not enough just to test it. You have to prove that the entire development process was done according to the quality standards. And the OEM, the car company, obviously needs to make sure that all of its suppliers, the entire supply chain, also plays according to those standards, which are very different from what we, again, as Israeli companies usually need to comply with. And this is a long, long process that you need to first implement in the company. Then you need to prove to the customer that you actually comply. This can be a process that takes more than a year just to be able to be accepted as a potential supplier. And we've had to go through this several times.
Yeah, I think that on our side, we're actually very fortunate to have regulation, because last year cybersecurity regulation has been approved. It's called UNEC R155, and it requires car manufacturers and their supplier, their tier ones, to deploy cybersecurity technology in the vehicle, as well as processes outside the vehicle to monitor all kinds of cybersecurity events. Of course, when it comes to cars, it is very challenging, because you need to predict, or you need to be ready to protect cars for 10 to 15 years. And this is what regulation requires, 10 to 15 years. How can we predict what will be the type of attacks, or what will be what the hackers will think in 10 to 15 years? What will be the landscape? Add to that, and this is something quite important, going back to the scaling from a startup to a grown-up company, when you develop technologies, you're going all the way through. You're coming with the best shot that you can, but when you deal with the OEMs, with the car manufacturers, they're looking for a cost-effective solution. So this is the point where you start to scale down and you're looking for a granular solution just to put your foot in the door and be able to be part of production project. When it comes to cybersecurity, due to the regulation, the car manufacturers are looking for the basic entry level to comply with the regulation. But of course, they're also concerned what will happen several years from now. How can they continue to protect? So the solutions that you deploy have to be scalable and upgradable. Otherwise, a recall could happen. And of course, a recall is €100, $100 per car, and that could be a huge expense.
So actually, I have a following question, and it's a general question, not only for the automotive industry. Regarding commercialization strategy, when is the right timing for a young company, a startup company, a company entering the growth phase? When is the right timing to start to think about commercialization strategy, really to deploy those people, to have those plans and everything? You are, I think, the most advanced, and your former job, you can tell us more about this. When is there a right point? Is it okay to think about it, to spend money on this? When?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think that at any point of time, a leader at a company has to be ready with a plan when he should, become very focused on the business and start delivering the numbers. Of course, in the first years of the company, as we said, we're expensing for the market to be aware, to penetrate the market. That's great. We're spending more than we're earning, and that's fine. But you need to have in mind what happens when you have the first project, the second project. How do you focus? When we're just starting, we're looking at 5, 7, 8 products. How do you understand what's the market potential? Where do you see the numbers? How do you price the people that you're going to send out there for the services, and so on and so forth? Definitely a multi-year plan is always required. You need to understand how you're going to recognize the revenue, how you're going to have bookings. That's, I'm sure that Chagai and Or can emphasize with that. You need to at least to have it in the back of your mind once you get started. When the shift is done from a startup to a company that starts delivering, what the business plan looks like. You need to be ready with that from the get started.
Chagai, I want to hear your answer as
sure.
well. And also in sight of the micro-mobility plans for the future.
Sure. So first, engage as fast as you can, right? The industry is very special in its kind of behavior. They are looking for new things, but they are also very detailed and they have a very, I would say, extreme engineering mindset. So when you come, you have to have something real. Otherwise, wait a bit and then show it. And then get feedbacks. We were lucky enough to engage early to get feedbacks and then tuned a lot the offering. And I also agree with Ronan, you have to eventually understand when you start to make money, profits, revenues. Lucky in this industry, you have a long-term perspective. Every contract usually is, you ask a quote 2031 pricing. So every project starts from X year and lasts for at least 6, 7, 8 years. Eventually, if something is, I would say, in the infrastructure of the vehicle and it is essential, which all of us deal with that. So you have a long-term perspective on revenues. And yes, you need to understand how you eventually turn this into a business. Otherwise, every startup will get to a phase where it scales up, or people would expect to meet numbers, or you IPO the company, or you go public, or whatever you do. If you don't have a solid business model, then yeah, it ends. And you have to have a long-term mindset, especially in this industry.
Owen?
So, first of all, engagement with the customers and with the market is something that we did from day one, even before that. Before we actually raised the first money, we already met with potential customers in order to first characterize the product, but also get their feedback on what we were seeing as the future product and our plan towards reaching it. Our focus from the start was not on the long tail of applications for LiDAR. So there are many applications for LiDAR. Everything robotic will be, and only starting to have a LiDAR, from drones through small delivery robots that deliver pizza to your doorstep. There's so many applications for LiDARs, but we chose to focus on the massive but faraway market of the OEMs, of the car makers, which is a very long journey, as Chagai and Ronen here know, but there's a huge prize in the end. And those projects take almost 5 years from the moment that you're nominated or that you're evaluated until you actually get on the road, start of production. That's a very long time, and something that I also advise to companies attempting to target a similar market like us. You can't have the entire plan at the point where you're supposed to be nominated, because it's 5 years ahead.
So you have to be agile and all the time really, shift the plan and make sure you react.
Right. As Ronen said, the company that wins the design win is not the same company that needs to deliver in the end. So you need to be, on the one end, very rigorous in your plan, mainly to be able to show a plan that can meet the reality, that the OEM can trust, but you must assume that you need to adapt it going forward until production.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Owen brought a very good point. The cars that are getting on the road this year were designed in 2015, 2014. It's amazing, so many years have passed. We got awarded for the cars or for the deals that are getting on the road this year 4 years ago, so very long scale. However, I can tell you, I worked in the telecommunication industry and multimedia industry. The automotive industry is a completely different animal. And we need to understand the rhythm and how this industry is working. Oren referred to pre-development project. This is the door entry, the key entry to the project. And we as Israelis, we always say, if there is a POC, they should pay for it. They should put, bread on the game. They should, but it's not exactly how it works. And at automotive, you need to enter by working with the engineers, not only top down. We always running to the CTO and to the CEOs. Automotive industry is different, and this is where the challenges come for us to understand how it is working. And this is the key for startups, and to get the right consultants and understand what's the next step for them, and as we said, scale over time.
So I'm a magician, and I can give you a magic stick, but you can fulfill only one challenge like this, and this would be the end of our talk now. So what would be your challenge that you wish to tackle now and with the magic stick, all three of you? Ronen? Yeah.
So I would say global scale. I mean, if you'd ask me what my biggest challenge right now, and we refer to that in the opening words, is really being able to scale up with all the challenges in the employment, because I think that our technology is good, we're successful. Right now, the challenge that we need to overcome is
going global.
Yes.
Chagai?
So I think one big, if I use a magic stick, a big dream, I think we want to harness, I call communication, to make something very cost efficient to every object that's using road. In my army time, I was almost killed in a car accident when going up north because of a non-line of sight incident that I rolled into a ditch later on and found myself in a hospital, but I'm here. And I think that if we harness technologies from outside this domain into this domain, then we connect everything, and smartwatches, somebody runs at the side of the road, or two-wheelers or cars, and then eventually I see it like an iron dome, right? Like a protective shield that you cannot get close to somebody who's there. And that is eliminating those non-line of sight conditions. And it's a big journey because you require an ecosystem and penetration. So we would probably sit here in 10 years' time, and we would think how this is not happened before. And my analogy to always people is think about the world without cellular and what would be today if we wouldn't have smartphones, some for the good, some for the bad, but it changed the world, right? We have internet and data in seconds in our pockets. And I think that when we harness connectivity to the world of autonomous in the future, and now cars, we can eventually eliminate accidents with all the rest of the sensors, right? It's not alone. But you can eliminate in a very cost-efficient manner every type of accident eventually. And I wish this would happen sooner than later.
Oren?
My wish would be to solve ramp-up. First, the production ramp-up of these things from thousands a year today to millions. This is a huge, huge challenge that we're investing a lot of resources, huge amounts of resources in it. And the second ramp-up would be to be able to serve many customers in parallel, each a huge Goliath of a customer with its own specific requirements and needs. And these will be the two challenges of Innoviz in the coming years.
So now I have to go home and work on your wishes. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting us.